I'm born and raised for the most part in Wisconsin. I grew up, especially as a very young brown person, in suburban and rural Wisconsin right after 9/11. My congressman from where I lived, he's the guy who wrote the Patriot Act. I grew up with this understanding that my neighbors considered our family the other, that they equated us with terror and with terrorism, that they stereotyped us and discriminated against us, and that it wasn't necessarily safe to be outside our community. And as a result, in a way that has really sustained me and built me up, I grew up in my Indian American community, especially in my South Indian community. I grew up going to the temple every Sunday. I grew up at the houses of our uncles and aunts and family friends in the South Indian community in Wisconsin. And I grew up with my parents, especially my father, telling me the stories of our people's history, how we threw off the yoke of the British Empire, how we fought for justice for our community and for South Africans in South Africa, how we came to this country and with very little to support us, we have built our community up into something to be proud of. And I also grew up with him telling us that that wasn't enough, that we needed to do more, that we needed to fight for everybody, that civil rights for Black communities were under attack, that women's rights and women's health care was under attack, that the wars that I grew up watching our government wage in Iraq and Afghanistan, that those were our people too, that those were people who looked like us, and it could just as easily be happening to us as it is happening to them. I grew up with an understanding of the history of American foreign policy because my dad told me about it. And in many cases, he told it to me as history, right? It wasn't political fully for him. He didn't say, all right, you've learned about this, now let's go to this anti-war march or protest. He told it to us as history, but it gave me this grounding in what the American dream is about, what this country has done for us that we should be proud of and that we should be appreciative of, and then how much more that we need to fight and win in order to make that American dream that our community was told about all those years ago, how much more we need to do to make it real for everybody else and for us as well. In 2012, a white supremacist with a gun attacked the Sikh Gurdwara, the Sikh temple, 20 minutes down the road from where I was born. He murdered 6 members of the Sikh community in Wisconsin. And he did it because he thought that they were Muslim. He did that because he thought that they were part of this community that he shouldn't have targeted either, but he couldn't even tell us apart. And when that happened, our communities had a choice, right? Do we say, oh, we're not Muslim, don't shoot us. We're not Muslim, don't discriminate against us. We're not Muslim, don't target our houses of worship. Or we could come together and say that an injury to one of us is an injury to all of us, and that none of us are free from discrimination, from racism, from Islamophobia, from the threat of white supremacy and white nationalism until we are all free from all of those threats. And that really taught me and that really taught us what needs to happen and how hard we need to fight, not just for our own slice of the pie, but for an America, and in this case, a Pennsylvania, that works for all of our communities, that sees all of our communities, that lifts all of us up, and that supports us all to be at the table so that we can move into that shared future and live that American dream. I want our people to have power. I want our people to have real grassroots political power that isn't beholden to any one party or isn't beholden to any one elected official, but is ours to wield for the common good and in support of every member of our community. I want our people to be safe. I want us to have rights. I want us to have health care. I want us to have dignity on the job. I want an end to these ICE raids that are tearing families apart and sending us to countries that in many cases we were never a part of in the first place. And for myself, You know, we have this saying that our job as organizers is to organize ourselves out of a job. Our job is to build enough leadership that we are redundant, that we have trained enough people, that we have empowered enough people, that there are enough people there to share the load, that we don't have anything else to do. And so that is especially what I've spent the last 5 years doing at API PA, is training up staff, is training up organizers, is training up managers and directors, so that for as long as we need it, we have API PA as a civil rights and political home for our community, not just with the members, not just with the community leaders, not just with the grassroots organizers, in many cases folks who are fresh out of college in the first place, but so that we have the political infrastructure that so many other communities we have, so that we have lobbyists, so that we have communications directors, so that we have political directors, so that we have field directors, organizing directors, accounting directors, HR directors, all of the things that traditional advocacy organizations, PACs, super PACs, political organizations in other communities that they've had for so long, so that we have the leadership that can step in when there is an issue like Chinatown, when there is an issue like these ICE raids, and say, this is what we need to do. And so a lot of my work has been about training up that next generation of political leadership by and for our community, training up that next generation of political talent and political leadership that is ready to be accountable to our community, to organize and fight, not for what they think our people need, but for what our people, what our membership tells us that they need us to fight for. One of the things that comes to mind first is the fact that even to this day, Asian nonprofits across the country get 0.02% of all funding by philanthropy and foundations going into nonprofits annually, not 2%, 0.02%. So when we say that our community is politically invisible, when we say that our community is silent, we have to talk about the fact that other communities get untold hundreds of thousands and millions, if not billions of dollars more by foundations, by funders, by donors, by philanthropy than our communities do. At the same time, and this is really intuitive for some folks, but for some reason historically, especially before 2020, national foundations and funders had not caught on. It simply costs more to work in 2 or 3 or 22 languages than it costs to work in 1 language. And so we had all of these barriers, we had all these stereotypes about our community being silent, not caring about politics, being so hard or so expensive to civically engage and organize. But what we saw when we finally had the resources that we needed to engage our community at scale in 2020, in that 1 year we were able to double Asian American voter turnout in Pennsylvania. And that doubling contributed to Biden winning Pennsylvania and therefore beating Trump and becoming the president of the United States. And especially we were able to do that by signing up 50% of our community to vote by mail. But more than that, in so many cases, when we had those conversations, this was in 2020, so the height of the pandemic, we weren't knocking on doors, we weren't out in the streets, we were making phone calls in 15 languages, we were sending direct mail in 10 languages, we were organizing online and running ads in multiple languages. The response we got from the community was extraordinary. So many of our communities, especially outside Philly and Pittsburgh, they never dreamed of an organization that would meet them where they were in the language that they spoke. They never dreamed of getting called on the phone by someone who didn't just speak their language, but was from their own community, from their own ethnic background, who understood what they had dealt with, who understood what their family was dealing with, and was committed to bringing them in and building power with them long term. And so in so many cases we've seen across the Commonwealth, especially in places where our folks were even more under-engaged than they have been in Philly, for example, places like Bucks County, places like the Lehigh Valley, places like Harrisburg, our community has been so ready for political power, our community has been so ready to fight for their rights, for their health care, for their safety, and there just had never been a resourced organization and that was able to invest in their leadership, invest in their dignity, invest in their rights, invest in their power. So ever since then, we launched in 2020 and we've been working in 22 languages across Pennsylvania ever since, and we've consistently seen every election year after year, the way we doubled that turnout in 2020, our folks have not gone back. We've continued to show up year after year in every election, even last year in 2024, when other communities' turnout dropped for many different reasons, including voter apathy. Our community's turnout actually increased only by 20,000 votes, but still it increased compared to previous years. So, the first thing I'll say is that it makes sense. In too many cases, not just our community specifically, but young people in general, they've received so many messages from politicians and the parties that their voice doesn't matter, that these elected officials are not going to be accountable to them, that their interests are not going to be reflected in the policy change that these elected officials are fighting for. It's the same for our Asian American community, where for so long, because we were considered silent, because we were considered invisible, because we were considered voiceless, elected officials didn't come to our community. Elected officials didn't talk about things like language access. They didn't talk about things like anti-Asian violence. They didn't talk about justice for immigrants and refugees in our community. Over the last 5 years, we've finally been able to change that across our organizations at our statewide coalition, the AAPI PA Power Caucus, a couple of years ago. We were able to have 1,600 conversations in 15 different languages to ask our communities for the first time what they want and need out of state government. And through all of those conversations, we were able to build a first of its kind Asian American policy platform for Pennsylvania. And now every year, in order to get an endorsement from AAPI PA, in order to get the thousands of door knocks and tens of thousands of calls, or in the case of a statewide election, hundreds of thousands of door knocks and millions of phone calls that we make for candidates that we back every year, you need to sign on to this platform, and you need to commit to working with your local Asian American organizations to make life better on the day-to-day level for our communities. But I look especially at the arena and the arena issue with Chinatown. I've never seen our community here in Philly mobilize at that level for an Asian American issue like this, and we've especially never seen it reflect in terms of voter turnout. For the first time ever, compared to previous fights where the Chinatown community has had to rally and mobilize against a stadium in 2000, for example, against a casino around 2008, 2009, against the Vine Street Expressway decades ago. They organized, they mobilized, they marched, they protested, but we'd never had the organizations and the infrastructure to engage our people politically. In 2023, for the first time ever, we ran a Save Chinatown City Council slate, where we endorsed members of City Council and City Council candidates specifically based on their commitment to oppose the arena and to fight for our communities, for housing justice for our communities, for lowering the cost of living for our communities, to ensure that these cultural neighborhoods like Chinatown, like Washington Avenue, that the way that the developers and billionaires have been trying to displace our community so they can put up luxury low-rise housing and things like that, that those would be stopped. And what we saw when we ran that program, when we went to our communities all across Philly and said, these city council candidates have committed to oppose the arena and to fight to save Chinatown, our community responded like they never have before. The highest votes for the Working Families Party candidates who won in the general election, Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke, both of whom were two of the first politicians in Philly to commit to oppose the arena and to support our Chinatown community, they got more votes from Chinatown than they did any other precinct in the entire city, because our community knew these Working Family Party candidates, Kendra Brooks and Nick O'Rourke, we're going to fight for them, we're going to be accountable to them, we're going to listen to them and to do what's right for our community. And we've consistently seen this arena issue mobilize and engage our community. We engaged 40,000 members of our community from all across Philadelphia to fight for the arena. We saw thousands of people, especially, I want to mention, the Indonesian community and especially the Indonesian bikers, march with us, ride with us year after year in our Save Chinatown marches. There was such an outpouring of support, and it meant so much to be able to cap off that campaign at the beginning of the year with a victory, because it showed our communities that when we fight, we win. If we stay silent, if we stay away from the table, if we don't get in the game, if we don't get involved, the folks who do not have our best interests in mind, the politicians and organizations who want to deport our community members, who want to gentrify Chinatown and Washington Avenue, who don't care about language access, who don't care about the Asian American vote, they get a pass. They get to keep doing what they want to do without any accountability from our community. But when we vote, when we fight, when we organize, and when we do that year after year after year in a way that brings all of our communities together, Chinatown showed us that we can win, and we're going to keep winning for our community from here on out. I'll say two things. One, the long-term solution to this is for our community organizations and our communities to recruit candidates and run candidates who we trust to be accountable to us and to represent our interests well. It is not enough for someone to raise their hand and say, I'm Asian American, therefore I will get Asian American donations, I will get Asian American votes, I will get Asian American organizations getting out the vote for me, and only because I'm Asian American, I get all that. We need to take that one step farther from just representation to what we call co-governance, where our candidates from our communities are inviting us to the table, listening to us, governing alongside us, in exchange for us working our butts off to get them across the finish line. And when these candidates disappoint us, when they vote against our interests, when they vote against our communities, it's our job to hold them accountable and make sure that they understand the power of the Asian American vote and the power of the Asian American community. At the end of the day, candidates are candidates and politicians are politicians. Many of them, unfortunately, will do what is in their best interests, will do what gets them that re-election, will do what gets them that election to that higher office. So we cannot just support candidates from our community. We cannot just run candidates because they are Asian American. We need to make sure that they align with our values. We need to make sure that they're committed to accountability for our community. And we need to make sure that our community is powerful enough that they're not supporting us, they're not listening to us out of the goodness of their own hearts or because of their values. They're supporting us because they need us. They're supporting us because they can't get elected if they don't back us and if they don't work with us and if they don't stand with our community when it really matters. And that's what we're trying to do with AAPI PA and with our statewide coalitions. We're trying to ensure that the days in which candidates side with us just because they share our values, just because they support immigrant justice or racial justice, we want candidates to listen to us and be accountable to us because they know that they don't have any other choice, because they know that they need our votes, because they need our support, because the Asian American community has power in Pennsylvania, and we are able to be disciplined enough and rigorous enough to use that power, to spend that political power where it counts, to ensure that politicians and parties are accountable to our community.
And
it's a complicated question that I want to name every community, especially every community of color, is struggling with, especially here in Philly, right? There are so many politicians from every background who take votes from their community, who get support from their community, and then turn around and unfortunately vote against their interests. It's important that we build coalitions with other communities of color so that we can ensure that there is a robust and multiracial democracy that has space for all of us, and that in the times and in the areas where our community is too small and our power is insufficient, that we have allies in our community that we can join together and build collective power so that these politicians have to listen to all of us and have to fight for all of us. But I'll say it starts for our community with us getting organized, with us joining organizations like AAPI PA, becoming members of these organizations, funding these organizations through organizational dues so that nonprofits don't have to do the work that funders want them to do, but can instead have the freedom to do the work that our community needs them to do. And lastly, it requires year-round organizing, year-round voter registration, year-round political education, year-round civic engagement, year-round policy work, year-round power building so that we can keep building it year after year. Our communities have been here in Pennsylvania for over 200 years at this point, and compared to other communities, our political infrastructure is barely more than 5 years old in terms of operating at the scale and at the level that other communities have with their PACs and their advocacy organizations and their political parties. It's our job to get there, and we've built a lot in the last 5 years, but we need to do more, and we need to commit to the long term if we're going to really be effective and if we're going to build the power that we need. You know, it makes me think especially about the arena issue, where there was a deliberate and funded attempt by these billionaire developers to pit communities against each other. There were lobbyists, there were ads, there were door-to-door canvassers saying the Asians are the ones stopping everyday working class Philadelphians from getting these jobs. The Asians are the one that are stopping these other communities from getting access to these grants and getting access to these resources and getting access to this, you know, basketball arena of all things, right? And the only people that benefited, right, let's be clear, it didn't benefit any community of color in Philadelphia. It benefited 3 white billionaires. And so we see this time and time again, that at the end of the day, when our communities are pitted against each other, when our communities are turned against each other, when we're focused on fighting for scraps down here, the only ones it actually benefits are the people who already have money and the people who already have power. And so absolutely these things happen on the daily. Absolutely we need to fight for our communities to get hired, to get promoted, to get access to resources, to be included in these grant programs. And in some cases I found it is malicious. In some cases I found it's just ignorance, and it can be, people can be educated, people can be made to understand. There's that myth about our community that I saw even as I started building AAPI PA, where I would talk to progressive nonprofits outside our community about the need to organize Asian Americans, the need to empower Asian Americans. And the first response I got was, well, y'all are all doctors and lawyers and engineers. You know, you're not really oppressed, you don't really face racial injustice. This money is better spent elsewhere. And it was really shocking, you know? It was deeply shocking to see so many people I trusted to be on the side of racial justice, to be on the side of immigrant justice, folks I had, you know, worked with for years for immigrant and racial justice, to say this. And in some cases, again, it is that ignorance, and in some cases it is that deep sense of scarcity, right? Anything I do for you is taken out of my pocket. Anything that you get is taken out of, it could have gone to my people. We're all fighting for this tiny slice of the pie. And in the meantime, folks like Elon Musk, folks like Jeff Bezos, folks like Donald Trump, they have all the money and the power in the world, and we're fighting each other. So my approach is that absolutely there's, like, at the individual level, at the organizational level, at the local level, we need to come together, we need to do repair, we need to talk about this. But in terms of fixing this long term, we can either keep fighting for these small scraps, or we can unite and organize together to take on the folks who have always ultimately been against our community and far too often weaponize this conflict between our communities to distract us from what they're doing to the cost of living, from what they're doing to the cost of housing, from what they're doing to the tax system so that they can get tax breaks while our small businesses now, you know, have to pay more taxes, right? There is so much more power to be built, and there's so much more to be won for our community when we unite with other people who are dealing with the same thing from the same people. And again, there is work to be done in terms of racial healing and bringing our communities together. But at AAPI PA, we believe that that work is best done in the streets. We believe that that work is best done fighting for change, and that through fighting together, we learn enough about each other. Through fighting together, we win enough together that we can start to see that there's more that unites us than there is that divides us. And that yes, there has been conflict. Yes, we have done things to each other that we need to work through and deal with and address. But at the end of the day, we can keep fighting for these scraps and these grants, these loans, these positions, And at the end of the day, we'll win this much. Or we can unite and organize to win the real change, the dramatic change, the systemic change that will benefit all of our communities so much more than we get from fighting with each other. It's a complicated question with a complicated answer, right? A couple thoughts I have is that it always starts with one person raising their hand and saying this isn't right, right? It always starts with one person having those conversations and saying, hey, we can't accept this. Every part of our community needs to start meeting with each other, needs to get organized, because in so many cases, because we have been so neglected, because we have been so underinvested in, so many of our communities, unfortunately, have this mentality of, it's not safe to stick my neck out. It's not safe to raise my hand. It's not safe to stand up. And we've seen time and time again why it's not safe, right? Anti-Asian violence, anti-Muslim violence, ICE raids, everything that happened after 9/11, right? There are so many examples in our community's history of the risks of standing up and making your voice heard. We need to show them an alternative. We need to show them what we can win if we stand up and make their voice heard. And our model especially is what we call these stepping stone fights, that we don't just fight for legislative change, we don't just organize for political power, we don't just contest an election because we want that end result of that legislation being passed, that arena being stopped, that election being won. We do this to show our people that if we can win this, we can win this. And if they can win this, they can win this. No one wants to take on a millionaire or billionaire or a $1 billion development corporation on their own. No one wants to pick a fight that feels like it can never be won. But together we have power, and the more we organize, the more we fight, the more we show people that these are winnable fights, that we're smart, that we're talented, that we have heart, that we're going to organize our butts off, and that we're going to win for our people, the more we will see people feeling that bravery, feeling that courage, being willing to stand up and make that difficult choice themselves, to put their own self-interest, their own personal interest aside, and do what's right for their entire community. But again, there is this history of our community's voices being suppressed. There is this history of our communities being targeted. There is so much that is telling all of our communities in so many different ways, it is too risky to stick your neck out. It is too risky to do anything but stay silent. And until enough of us start making our voices heard, until enough of us start being that change, and then until we show people that we can and we do win, when we fight, we do win, that is what will change that.